Hi, you're very welcome to our webinar here this afternoon. Sorry about the technical issues that we had there just getting this started. So just coming back to, I suppose, the objectives for today is around looking at the skills that are of relevance and will help you to deal with the current situation that we're all in. So it's looking at those key skills that will be valued and required during this current crisis, and also to explain how you can utilize those skills to best effect. And also then we want to look at, the highlight strategies that you can use to make sure that the skills and the contributions that you are making during this difficult time are recognized and will stand to you in terms of your career going forward. So we also then want to look at ways that this can benefit your career going forward, and that you can use those skills to full effect at a later stage. And also as well, obviously this is a stressful time and a difficult time for everybody. We want to look at ways in which you can deal with change, adapt, and be flexible at the same time, and effective, obviously, in your roles. So as we know, roles and responsibilities have, for most of you, probably shifted quite a bit, and the skills that you're using now in the last couple of days are probably very different to the key skills that you would have been using only just a few short weeks ago. And obviously this situation is evolving all of the time, so those skills will most likely shift again. So as with all crises, there are challenges, but there are also opportunities. And there are opportunities now for you to demonstrate your skills, to make a meaningful contribution to the organization, but also as well an opportunity for you not only to utilize the skills that you have, but to add to a whole new range of skills and experiences that will stand to you when we come out the other end of this challenging situation. So the first skill that we all need is basically adaptability. And again, over the last number of days and weeks, we've had to adapt very quickly to a fast moving situation. So we are required to adapt quickly, to be able to deal with the fear that obviously we all feel, the shock, and to come to terms with that very, very quickly, and be able to assess the situation around us, review the language around us, consider what's different and why. And obviously we're all aware of that, but looking at that from I suppose an organizational perspective, and I suppose a business perspective too. And what organizations are looking for is that agility and your ability to respond in these particular situations. And I use that word respond for a particular reason, because what we want to do is respond rather than react. And what I mean by that is that, like, if you're reacting, it's very much in fear and panic and you're giving over the power. But whereas if you're responding, you're doing so in a much more controlled way, and that comes across as much calmer, much more in control. So it's really looking at ways that you can respond rather than react. And yes, we need to move quickly in these situations, but it's taking that moment to, I suppose, to gather your thoughts, gather your self-control, and then to respond rather than react. And what we're all adapting to is a new situation here. So it's new problems that we're dealing with. So it does require new thinking, and that's something we all need to be mindful of, is that we are adapting our thinking and adapting the way we're operating to that new world that we're in. So thinking about those new problems, thinking about them in a different way, and being agile, and thinking about how we can adapt in the new world that we're living in. And obviously as well, post this, the world that we're living in is likely to be quite different too. So this is a good way of getting used to that and adapting our skills and our way of thinking to that situation. Moving on then, I think analytical thinking is really, really crucial in this type of situation. And I suppose looking at the situation that we're in, analysing it, looking at the potential impacts that it's likely to have within the organisations that you're working in looking at, deciding, well, what is the data I need to be looking at? What are the key stats and KPIs within the organization, whether that's cash flow, whether that is revenue, whether it's headcount, whether it's cost, and it's interpreting that data in a very meaningful way, and that will then help to provide the insights and the information that will drive decisions. So again, it's thinking about this in a slightly different way, and thinking about, well, look, what is the data that will be meaningful to the organization? How can I analyze that data that will help? So it's whether that's in the shape of modeling, projections, and it's then seeing how you can connect that to the reality of the organization that you're working in. And for some, that will be purely financial. For others, it will be non-financial information as well. So it's looking at that from the very broadest way that you can in terms of the information that you have access to, thinking more broadly and saying, right, what other information would be useful here in the context of the organization, whether that's headcount, whether that is other data that is relevant, and looking at this from a wider perspective. And then you also need to be able to cultivate the ability to anticipate future trends. So it's looking at this again in an analytical way, extrapolating those trends, and looking at ways in which you can kind of, I suppose, fill in the gaps, think innovatively, and put together kind of scenario planning and modeling. And this is something that organizations are doing kind of furiously around the world now in terms of different scenarios. So if this were to last, for example, 2 weeks or 2 months or 6 months, what are the different likely outcomes or the likely impact on the business? So it's really important that you're actively participating in those sorts of activities. And then when you have that information, it's looking at ways in which you can communicate that to your audience, whether that's internally within the business or externally. And this is where technology has a big role to play. So two of the packages that I've mentioned there are Power BI and Tableau that can be really very useful in the whole scenario planning, analysis, etc. So it's a good opportunity now to look and see, well, look, how can we enhance or develop the modeling that we're using within the organization, and then look at ways, whether that's through like the visual presentation of the numbers, but looking at ways in which you can get that message across in a very clear, very concise way. And Power BI and Tableau have some really good functionality around that can help you to present the numbers in graphic form or form other than pure numbers, particularly if you're dealing with non-finance people. So moving on then, communication skills are hugely important at a time like this. So it's really important that you're communicating regularly and keeping in touch on a regular basis, that the communication style that you're using is clear, it's concise, and also that it's timely, particularly in a situation where this is so fluid, like things are changing literally on an hour by hour basis. So it's really important that you are communicating on a very timely basis. An essential part of communication is also listening. So it's really important that you're listening not just to the people around you, but also that you're getting the temperature from the various different stakeholders that you need to hear from. So whether that's suppliers, whether that's from debtors, whether it's from staff, and other stakeholders both within the business and outside of the business. So it's getting the temperature from them. What feedback are you getting? How can you then I suppose craft or design your message so that it is resonating with those different stakeholders, and that that message is landing well at a very difficult time for people. So it is making sure that your message is clear, it's concise, it's relevant, and it has the right tone, and that you're considering that both internally. So for example, if you have a team that you are responsible for, it's making sure that you're keeping them in the loop in terms of what's happening on a very regular basis, because it is a worrying time for them too. So improving those levels of communication. And most of us are working remotely now, so it is looking at ways in which you can keep up the levels of communication. So things like Zoom, which we're using here today, or Teams, I've been using that very successfully with my own team, and having things like a virtual coffee meeting. So we would set that up for 11 o'clock most mornings, and it's more about, you know, that social connection with people, checking in with people and making sure that they're okay, and that still helps then in terms of that, you know, it's with general communication within the team, and also performance levels, motivational levels as well. So it's really harnessing the tools. Similarly, having a WhatsApp group to keep in touch with people can be really important, and work really very well in terms of maintaining the communication level. One thing I've seen quite a number of CEOs do, including our own, which is a video recording that they would use to circulate out to staff, to keep staff updated. I know of one particular CEO who recorded a video in his own home, in his living room, on his iPhone, and then distributes that out throughout the business on a global level every couple of days, because again, it's all about communication. It's keeping people in I suppose in communication and involved and up to date, because if you're not doing that and there is a void, something else will fill it, and it's usually negative talk, or people start to become worried. So it's really important that you have transparent, regular communication. And luckily, I suppose this has happened at a time when we do have access to those various different forms of communication. So it's a great opportunity not only to upskill in terms of your own communication skills, but also the technology that is available to us to facilitate that. So people management, obviously always a really important skill, but particularly at a time like this, where you want to, I suppose for want of a better expression, rally the troops, inspire the teams. And you will notice across your own teams that different people react to these kind of situations in at different times, and they react in different ways. So there is going to be that curve in terms of how people react to these situations, and different people will be on that curve of fear and uncertainty at different points. So you do need to be really mindful of where your team are at, and show leadership at a time like this, you know, so by yourself in as much as you can, staying calm, staying focused, and giving really clear direction, and then, you know, being mindful of the people who you have within the team who might be struggling a little bit more, taking them under your wing at that little bit more, providing support, providing really clear direction, and checking in within the team on a regular basis as well. And this, if I suppose you can bring people on board and foster that team spirit now, and that sense of, look, we're all in this together, we're all going to work through this together and come out the other end, the chances are you will come out the other end of this as a much stronger team, as a much stronger I suppose leader as well, with, I suppose, the benefit of hindsight and having gone through this and learned a whole new set of leadership skills and qualities. You will also need to make sure that you're delegating responsibility, because as a leader, you're not going to be able to take on everything yourself. So you do need to make sure that you are delegating responsibility, and people will step up to the mark with that support. I've seen that already within my own team, where people have really stepped up and have gone above and beyond, and have really embraced the opportunity. And you know, there are hidden skills there within your teams that will come to the fore. So it's really a good opportunity now to give people that chance to excel, to demonstrate the skills that they have, and for you to embrace that diversity within your team in terms of the diversity of thinking, the diversity of skills, and the diversity of experience, because you're going to have people within your team that may have been through the financial, like the crisis back, or the financial crisis back in 2008. So that experience is something that is invaluable at a time like this. So I would be urging you to kind of tap into that knowledge and that experience, and to really embrace that and try and get the most from the team here. And as I said, people will step up to the plate with that encouragement, with that support, by you as that leader showing that leadership going forward. And again, coming back to my point here, this is all about communication and keeping your team involved, letting them know what's happening, and letting them know what the plan is, what the objectives are, what the expectations are of them at this time. And then obviously, it's about communicating, I suppose, thanks, recognition, and support at a really crucial time. So as I mentioned earlier, communication nowadays often is supported by the whole area of technology. And when you're communicating financial data, as I mentioned earlier, there are lots of new ways to do that. So it's making sure that you're using that technology. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that again in terms of whether it's infographics, whether it's tables, etc. So it's really making sure that you're conveying a very clear and very compelling message at a time when people will have a lot of kind of information overload. Some people will be quite stressed, and you really need to deliver that message very clearly and in a very compelling way. So visualization and the tools that are available in that space can actually really help. And so just to drive that message home to you. So again, another key skill at this time like this is asking the right questions. So it's being able to get to the nub of the issue or the nub of the challenge for the organization. And that is about asking the right questions, and what is often referred to as powerful questions. So it's taking that time to really delve into situations. So it's looking at the what, the how, the where, the why, and really getting a full understanding of the situation, taking that time to deep dive into the challenges, and kind of sitting around the table with the various stakeholders to get to the I suppose the root or the full understanding of the key challenges. Because if you do that and you're asking the right questions to get to the full understanding of the challenges, you're in a much better position to be able to put together strategies that would help you to kind of get through the other end of this. So it's really about asking those strong, challenging questions, as I said, those powerful questions, the what, the why, good, strong, open questions that will really help. And often if you think about children and the types of questions they ask, and they don't give up till they get the answer, the answer. So it's really going back to that type of mentality, or the 5 whys is another good approach in this situation, to kind of ask, well, why, but why, but why, so it's really digging down deep into each situation until you fully understand it, or fully understand the impacts that it's likely to have. Because if you understand those in more detail, the strategies that you come up with are more likely to be effective when you have that full understanding. So it's about asking those sometimes obviously difficult, challenging questions, but it's not to be afraid to shy, don't shy away from those, essentially. So relationship management is essential and is really important during a time like this. So as with the people management side, it's bringing people along with you, and that is not just within the business, it's also I suppose with other stakeholders outside of the organization as well. So whether that's debtors, whether it's creditors, whether it's the banks, whether it's the owners, investors within the organization, it is really important to manage that network, leverage it, stay in contact with them, and don't be afraid to kind of seek input, advice, guidance from others within your network. So if you know others within a similar business or similar organization, it's a good idea to kind of seek input. So for example, we had a webinar for members in practice last week, and it was a panel discussion where the various members in practice were giving their insights, their input, sharing their experiences of what were the key challenges for them within their practices and within their firms, and also what their clients were seeing. And that was really useful. So that's a good example of where your relationships with others can actually give you some really good feedback, some good insights, which can inform your decisions. So it's about kind of checking in with your network, checking in with people, finding out what it is that's going on. And it's also a time, an opportunity to connect with people, to kind of demonstrate empathy, demonstrate understanding. So whether that's within your own team and your own business, or whether it might be within, you know, I suppose organizations where you have like strong working relationships with, because, you know, we're in this together. So essentially we do need to work with each other and support each other to get through this. And the more connection we have, and the more communication we have throughout this, the more likely it is that, you know, we're going to come out the other end of it in a better way. So it is about connecting with those internal and external stakeholders, and it is at times like this where, you know, your network will be there to support you. I know somebody I know who works on a self-employed basis within the training area. She's been reaching out to others who are in a similar situation. Obviously they've been negatively impacted, you know, their business has dropped dramatically, and she was getting, you know, I suppose great support from her network, you know, and checking in, just finding out what other people are doing, getting ideas as to how they're handling their own current situation. So it can be a really good source of support, and this is where networks and your relationships will really stand to you. But it's also a time in which you can strengthen and foster good relationships that will last and be of benefit to you at the other end of this. So positive mental attitude is really important during a time like this, where, you know, we're looking at this as a situation, as a glass half full. And look, honestly, that can be difficult at times. I'm not being flippant here by any means, but we will have lapses in that where, you know, we do catastrophize and we're looking at the worst case scenario. But you do need to pull yourself back and remind yourself that, look, you know, there are positives here. This may be a short-term situation. Look at the things that you stand to benefit from this. You know, this was a discussion we were having within our own team too, in terms of looking at, you know, the positives for people, whether that's, you know, less time spent commuting, for example, maybe more time at home, you know, more time with family, etc. A greater focus on family as well. And then, you know, the learnings and the learning opportunities. So for example, for myself, you know, getting more familiar with technology has certainly been a positive outcome for me. So it's really looking at the positives in this situation. Also from I suppose a work and a business perspective, looking at this from a solutions focus. So what solutions can we look at in this scenario? And many of the solutions will have a longer term benefit for the organization. So whether that's, you know, kind of a move to technology, whether it's process improvements, etc., whether it's an improvement in communication lines. So it really is looking at those solutions. And as I said, some of those will then have, you know, longer term impacts within the organization. And again, I would have seen some of those within my own role here, you know, where things, you know, like those changes will be positive in the longer term. We also need to then look at the language that we're using, and, you know, trying where possible to be, you know, more positive in the use of language, you know, for ourselves, both on a personal level, but also on a professional level, and watching the narrative in our own head, you know. So catching that, like, what are we saying to ourselves? Is the message constantly negative in terms of, oh, look, we're never going to get out to the other end of this, or, you know, this, like, I'm not performing well here, or, you know, whatever that might be. It's catching that narrative in your own mind, challenging that then to see, look, is there actually truth in that? Is it justified? And then, you know, trying to kind of change that to a more positive narrative and a more positive message in your own head, because that will help then in terms of your own ability and resilience to get through this. It'll also help in terms of your mental health and well-being, and overall your ability to bounce back after a situation like this. So it is really focusing on that growth and positive mindset. And like, so for example, looking at this in terms of the challenges that we're facing, but how this would help us to grow from a personal and a professional level, rather than the fixed mindset of, look, gosh, we're stuck in this now, we're never going to get out of it. So it is looking at this from a more positive perspective. As I said, I know that's difficult sometimes, but it is, for the most part, just trying to be positive and look at the solutions that we can source at a time like this, and then looking at those potentially as, you know, medium and long term benefits to ourselves, but also to the organizations for which we are responsible for and that we're working with in at the moment. So decisiveness, really important. Obviously, there have been lots of big decisions that have been made already, or that have to be made over the coming weeks and months. And the key to this here is your ability to be able to make decisions quickly, because oftentimes if you're seen to be stalling on making decisions, you can lose the confidence of others, particularly if you're in a leadership role. So you need to be you know, showing your ability to swiftly gather the facts, getting the views of others. So, you know, you're not racing into making a decision, but you are quickly gathering the facts, gathering the information, getting the views of others, and then, you know, relatively quickly making a decision. And the key here is to keep moving forward, and particularly in a situation like this where it is quite fluid. You know, not all of the decisions that you make you know, are going to prove to be the right ones down the line, because it is so fluid. But the important thing is that you're making the decisions based on the facts that you have at the time, and that you're revisiting those and adjusting those decisions and flexing as you go along. So it's about that adaptability, flexibility and agility that I mentioned earlier. But, you know, the worst thing is to be seen to be standing still, that you're frozen into indecisiveness essentially, and that you're not making the decision. So you really do need to be able to demonstrate that you're not afraid to make the decisions quickly. And then obviously as you go through the situation, you've more information to hand, showing that you're able to adjust, you're able to flex and able to change going forward. There's going to be lots of that, because I suppose until we know how long the situation is going to run, you know, there's a lot of decisions that, you know, are being made now but might need to be tweaked. So for example, cash flow wise, you know, you might make a particular decision now in relation to cash flow, but if this situation were to go on for longer, that may need to be revisited again. That's just one example. Or in terms of headcount, you know, the headcount that you might need now versus what you might need in 3 months' time if this continues could be different. But the thing is, you need to be seen to be acting and to be making decisions relatively quickly, and to keep the confidence of the various different stakeholders. So moving on then, project management, again, a really important skill. And we've seen this like across the board in general, and for our members, that project management has been a skill that is very much more in demand across the board, as organizations were taking on various change management initiatives and programs. But I suppose the fundamental basis of project management and the structured approach of it can be very useful when you're managing not just change but a crisis type situation, because it gives you that kind of structured approach to managing the resources of the organization, and you're I suppose combining the kind of the operational and the financial elements to it, and it gives you a really strong structure in terms of managing the various different steps that you're taking, and then if you're using the project management methodologies or tools, it's a really good way of tracking you know, I suppose a range of activities and goals and I suppose like work that needs to be done. It's a great way of then tracking it, allocating out the responsibilities, tracking those, and also then I suppose collaborating and getting people involved. And it really does aid a very much a team-based approach with very clear objectives, a very clear structure, a very clear approach, and full transparency throughout the process as well. So you're much more likely to get the I suppose everything achieved that you need to get it done, and it keeps things on track. And if things are going off track, you're notified of that or aware of that very quickly, so you can make the the adjustments and the required changes to make sure that you're not falling behind. As I said then as well, it's a good way of getting people involved, tracking their activity, managing their activity, getting them to kind of work together more cohesively. And there's a lot of project management tools that are available out there. So there's Microsoft Project, for example. There's another then, Trello is another one that I know a lot of people use. So like they're either, free of charge, or certainly not particularly expensive to purchase. So, worth looking at in terms of giving you a structure, or even just a project management style of approach, or a way of thinking about a particular situation or body of work, can really work very well in a situation where there's time pressures, things need to be done very, very quickly, and there's going to be, I suppose, very often a cross organization collaboration required. So trying to kind of manage that can be quite difficult. So a project management approach, or a project management skill set and capability will stand to you in this situation. So if you have that skill set, I'd be saying absolutely use it, and to good effect. But if you don't have it, now is a good opportunity to familiarize yourself with those approaches, and to look at the likes of Trello or Microsoft Project, and to start using those tools in terms of managing your own workload, and potentially the workload of your team as well, and to start incorporating that project management way of thinking and looking at that. There's actually quite a lot of resources online, even just to get you started in terms of the different approaches that you can take to managing projects. We have been running actually a number of project management courses here with the Institute over the last 2 years, and they've been one of the more popular courses, because people our members are saying that it is really an invaluable tool and skill set in the world that we're working in, particularly I suppose around the whole kind of change management, IT implementations, etc. So it's definitely one to consider and look at areas of upskilling. Linked to that then is the whole area of seizing digital opportunities. And I know a lot of organizations have, I suppose, kind of gone down that road more so over the last couple of weeks, and have accelerated their move towards technology. So even in the likes of using Zoom or Teams for meetings or conference calls. So it's really to look at ways in which you can leverage technology, and how technology can benefit you and your organization more at a time like this. And what are the technologies, that you can incorporate into your day-to-day lives now, that again, I can see a situation where a lot of meetings will going forward be taking place on formats like this, like Zoom, that might cut down kind of travel for people. There may be more of a move towards working from home longer term, because we have the technology, where there might have been a bit of resistance to that before. I do think, there's definitely going to be more of a move towards that, similarly like with online learning platforms, etc. So it is looking at the different technologies that can benefit you now, but also as well in a post COVID-19 world as well. And also as well, if you're looking at I suppose systems and processes within the organization where you might need to be tweaking or changing those, there could be process improvements there that will stay and last beyond the crisis. So for example, looking at online systems and processes, going more towards an online process as opposed to paper. So moving towards a paperless office, for example, might be something that will work now and beyond the crisis as well. So this may have forced or may force some organizations into adopting technology that bit quicker than maybe they thought. So look to see where those opportunities are. Look to see if you can make your mark by identifying what those opportunities are now, and championing the use of those technologies across the organization, because that will stand to you, that you can then say, look, I drove this was my initiative, and that will then stand to you from a careers perspective. So creativity and problem solving, obviously, it's stands to reason that that would be a skill set that's really important, and it's the ability to look at kind of existing knowledge in in a new way, in a new situation, to kind of make connections and explore kind of potential options, and look at ways in which you can generate new ideas and opportunities for mitigating risk. Obviously a big part of what organizations are going to do. So if you have creative ideas or you have solutions that you can present to the organization, now is the time to be doing that and to be championing those ideas, and communicating those, and showing that creativity and that ability to problem solve. And a lot of this often comes for chartered accountants and for members, comes from your deep understanding of the financials of the organization, and it puts you in a very strong position to solve complex problems, because particularly again in the current world that we're living in, a lot of the problems that organizations are going to face are going to have a financial impact. So now is your opportunity to step up, and with that deep understanding of the organization, to come up with solutions, to come up with ideas, to be creative, and again they will then serve you well in terms of I suppose you showing your value to the organization, you showing your impact, your ability to step up to the mark here and to really support and help an organization during a very challenging time. And again, it's a learning curve for you. Will it be scary? Sometimes, yes, but it's in these situations where we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone that we really get to see what our true capability is. That you just go headlong into it. Yes, you feel the fear, but you go and you do it anyway, and you'll come out the other side with additional skills, with additional recognition, and you look back and kind of go, well, do you know what, that was tough, but it was worth doing, because you learned a new skill set, you supported the business, and also as well it has given you a whole new set of skills, a whole new range of experiences. But also as well, it's going to be confidence boosting, because if you have success in that space, it will give you the confidence to forge on further with your career. So emotional intelligence, I'm sure, is a phrase or a term that many of you may have heard of, and it is something that is a critical leadership quality and skill, particularly at a time like this. And it refers to your ability to identify your emotions and the emotions of others, and to be able to harness those emotions and to apply them to tasks. But in particular, it relates to your ability to be able to kind of regulate and manage them. So I mentioned fear earlier. So it's being able to identify when you may be feeling worried or you may be feeling fearful, and then kind of tapping into that, and then I suppose having ways and strategies in which you can regulate that fear. So whether that is, through, I suppose calming your own mind with yoga, meditation, going for a walk, whatever it is that helps you to stay calm or to manage those emotions. But the first thing is to be aware of those. And then when you have that awareness, it is finding ways that work for you that will regulate and manage those. And if you can do that, it will stand to you, because you'll be able to perform much better. You'll be much more focused. Your impact on others around you will be much more positive. So rather than others seeing you as stressed or worried or concerned, they will see you as in control, focused. Now that may not be what you're necessarily feeling all of the time inside, but it is trying to kind of harness those feelings, manage those feelings, and that will enable you then to react in more of a respond rather than react. So it's about that kind of self-regulation. Obviously, we can't control a lot of what's going on around us at the moment, but what we can do is to manage our response to this, and that's where your emotional intelligence comes in, to be able to identify those emotions, control them, and then respond in the best way possible, because that will then help to achieve a better outcome than might otherwise be the result. So as you can see, it really is a key leadership skill, because if you can do that for yourself, but also to kind of then recognize the emotions that are going on for others within your team, you're going to be better placed to manage them and to get the most from them. So it really is a vital skill in a crisis, because it'll help you to manage your own emotions and your own response and your own performance, but also that of others, and will enable you to be able to pick up on the emotions and fears of others, support them. And it also helps us in terms of communications, because if we spot that, for example, a team member is under stress, we might tailor the communication or the way we're communicating with them. We might take a few moments to support them first, give them, a bit of time to listen, and then communicate. So you have a much better chance of influencing and landing your message if you're more in tune not only with your own emotions but the emotions of others as well. So it's worth just taking time out to check in, and it also helps in terms of managing our own well-being and mental health at a difficult time as well. And this is very much linked to that self-control, composure, because we do as leaders need to be seen to be composed during a difficult time, and then have those strategies in place to help us maintain that composure. For different people, it's different things. For some, it's yoga, others it's cycling, others it's walks, whatever that might be. You just need to find something that works for you, and then that composure then will help you then to perform much more strongly, and to be seen as a strong leader within your organization who can make calm, collected, rational decisions and inspire the trust and confidence of others around you. So it is a really crucial skill set. I mentioned your well-being, and I think it would be fair to say that we're all feeling increased levels of stress at the moment. So it is really important that we do I suppose look at that in terms of our mental health. We're managing our energy. I'm sure many of you are finding that you're working longer hours now, even though you don't have commute and you're working from home. So it is really important that we're managing our energy. We're taking that time out to refuel the tank, still taking the time out for activities you enjoy. Okay, some of them may be curtailed, but there are still things that we can do that will help us to manage our energy and well-being. So really the key here is whatever works for you, but to make sure that your health is your wealth. And I think that's one of the key things that we're learning from this experience, is that health is so important. So it is a time to kind of focus on that for ourselves, maintaining our I suppose our physical and our mental health at a really important time when this may run for a while. So it's important that we're I suppose sustainably managing our energy, and that we have the mental capacity and physical capacity to work through this crisis if unfortunately if it does run on longer. So it is really important, because your well-being and your health underpins your ability to I suppose kind of deal with the crisis, but also to kind of maintain your career and your performance and your sustainability. So it's crucially important. So how do we go about getting recognition for the hard work that we're doing at a time like this? So it really is about that kind of visibility. Now, I suppose that can be hard when we're working from home, but what you need to do is make sure that I suppose the leaders of the organization or the management team are aware of the good work that you're doing. So don't be afraid to let them know, whether that's over a call that you would have in that regular communication, or whether it's via email to keep your manager or whomever up to date in relation to the good work that you're doing, because it is really important to make yourself visible, and to be promoting your skills, promoting your successes, because typically and research has shown this again and again, that career success is more based on kind of your exposure, and by that I mean your visibility within the organization, than necessarily kind of the impact that, or the your image, or indeed your performance. So it's more about the exposure piece. So if you look up the PI model online, you'll see that exposure by far, and that visibility element. So it's visibility rather than capability has time and time again shown to be the main reason why people get promoted. So it's yes, absolutely, doing the best job that you can is key to this, and it's looking at ways in which you can do that, but it's also making sure that people are aware of the good work that you're doing. So it's promoting the skills, it's promoting the successes that you have, but also as well looking for ways that you can utilize the skill set that you have. So it's an opportunity now to step up, to volunteer for, you know, high profile projects, and to kind of put yourself out there and to ask to be more involved and look at new opportunities and new ways to get involved across the organization. So it's not being afraid to do that and to ask to be involved, because that will be recognized. It will be I suppose recognized and welcomed, because it is a case of all hands on deck for a lot of organizations. So your enthusiasm and willingness to get involved, you know, will stand to you, because, you know, good opportunities may come out of this, that where you're showing your enthusiasm, your ability, you know, your dedication to the organization, you know, may present as an opportunity for you to be kind of noticed and recognized at the end of this. And there may be all sorts of new types of roles and opportunities that come out of this at the other end. So you know, if you're getting involved in something new now, it may be something that is a real opportunity down the line. So for example, if you were to start using the project management methodologies or tools, or, you know, financial modeling tools that the business hadn't done already, that might be something, and I'm sure it probably would be something that they would want to continue on down the line. So that could be your opportunity then to lead and to demonstrate your skills even further down the line then as well. So it's to look at those, where are those opportunities now, where are those hidden opportunities, and where are they now, and where is the future career potential likely to be within those areas. So looking at ways of upskilling throughout this, obviously it's you know, I suppose a lot of this is going to be learning on the job, and learning as you experience new situations and new scenarios. But it's also not a bad time to kind of look and see, well, look, where are the gaps, you know, and doing that quick audit of your skill set against what the skill set requirements are at a time like this, even from the skills that I've mentioned there. Where do you feel are the gaps for you? And what could you be doing at a time now, like when we all have a little bit more time in our hands, even over the weekends, etc., and the evenings, because we're not out and about as much. Like, how can you use that time to really identify the gaps? Also to look at what your core skills are, where are your strengths, and, you know, how can you best utilize those skills in the current environment. So you might say, well, actually, do you know what, I am really good at the whole kind of financial modeling piece. How can you now utilize that skill to better effect within the organization? So it's not just about identifying gaps, but it's also looking at, well, look, what are your strengths? How can you use those to best effect? Like, if you're a really strong leader, how can you step up further to use those leadership skills? If you're a really good communicator with empathy, how can you leverage that within the organization and be recognized for that in the coming weeks and months? And it's also, as I mentioned earlier, kind of sticking your head above the parapet, putting your hand up, get involved in key projects within the organization and ask to be involved in those. And there's also potentially an opportunity to get involved in multidisciplinary teams as organizations, you know, pull together, and the different areas and different disciplines pull together to forge a way forward. There could be an opportunity there to work in areas outside of finance. And also then look to see, are there mentors or sponsors within the organization or externally that you can, you know, I suppose, lean on or look to for guidance and support during this time, that they might be able to give you support and guidance based on the experience they have. And similarly then, I think I mentioned this earlier, there are a whole range of various different online tools and resources, including, you know, courses. There's also distance courses that a lot of organizations, including our own, run. So now could be a time that you take that time out to look and say, right, okay, I have that little bit of extra time on my hands. What can I do, you know, to utilize that to best effect? And like, there has been quite a lot of kind of surveys and research around that in recent times that has indicated that people are looking to use this time for further education and upskilling and training. So, you know, it's certainly something to consider. With that in mind, I just wanted to kind of draw your attention to our career pathway tool, because this will build further on whole kind of skill sets that are required at different stages of your careers. You'll see here, like whether you're level 1, 2, 3, or 4. So whether you're a young professional or whether you're in that leader C-suite space, we have a tool online that will help you to kind of identify the key skills and competencies that are required across like the technical side, the leadership side, and also business commercial areas as well. So I would just like, if you want to look at this in more detail, then that's where I would ask you just to log on to the website for that. So in summary then, I hope I've given you a good sense of what the key skills and a snapshot of what those key skills are that are valuable during the situation that we find ourselves in. What I would suggest as well is keeping a note or a diary or a record of, you know, your achievements and your learnings at this stage, at this time, because often we forget about these things, or it's not till we look back that we kind of realize. But I think it's good, just even from a performance management perspective, and to keep a note of your achievements, the key note of the learnings and where you feel you have developed and the skills that you have developed. I think it's good to just do an analysis of that, and to help you increase your awareness of what those are and what have you learned and what new skills have you added to your toolkit as such, you know. So it's a good opportunity to look at that, and also as well to highlight the contributions that you've made. So that'll help you in terms of, you know, raising your personal brand and raising your profile within the organization, so that you can, you know, whether that's now or at a later stage, you know, highlight to management the contributions that you have made within the organization at a later stage as well. And just, I suppose, to help you to kind of look at this through a different lens, and it's in that growth kind of mindset perspective, where we're looking at where new opportunities might arise in a post-COVID-19 world, and look and see, you know, can try and project forward to see, well, look, where are the potential opportunities for me in this, and start crafting or building a career plan around it. How do you now develop the skills and the experience that you need to I suppose kind of drive that career forward for yourself, and what are the skills that you might need in that post COVID world, because there's no doubt that there will be opportunities arising, and new roles and new opportunities, and new skill set requirements at the other end of this. So just thinking about this from a positive perspective as well, and that's what we all need to do, is to remain positive, and where possible to be as proactive as we can, work together collaboratively to I suppose get through this in one piece and together. So hopefully that has given you some insight and support. If you require further support from a careers perspective, I am available at the contact details mentioned there. More than happy to take a call from anybody at any stage, in terms of what we've covered here, or whether you're looking for career advice in general, or for some you may be worried or concerned about your role. And if that's the case, you know, do contact me. If anybody has any questions, do let me know. This has been recorded, by the way, as well, so we will be making it available online as well on our website over the next couple of days. So we just need to I suppose edit it, and then it will be made available. And as I said, I'm contactable on any of the numbers or email addresses there, so happy to take any questions offline as well, or if there's any feedback, really would welcome that. The other thing I would ask is, if you have any particular subjects or areas or topics that you would like me to cover in future webinars, do let me know. I'm really interested to hear those, so that we can come to you with topics and material that is specifically relevant to you at a time like this, or indeed in general. More than happy to hear those, and would welcome your input and feedback in relation to that. Or if you want to share any of the experiences that you're having, or if there are topics that we can add to the CPD program, we'll be really happy to get that feedback from you as well. And thank you so much for joining us here today. Hope you benefited from it and got something of value from it. And thank you for taking the time to join us here today. Thank you.